Training for us has been great. I think the main thing is we've remained consistent in our approach and just making sure that although we have a fair bit of new faces in the group and we're trying to acclimate everybody, we had a really good preseason. And I think we did the majority of the brunt work in that time, in that window. And these weeks now are starting to represent more fine-tuning certain details, both sides of the ball to the opponent. And I think having 2 reps under our belts already, just waiting on the result. But I think the process has been great. I think the guys have leaned into it, and just getting guys back from injury, having guys rotate into different spots. I think it's all part of the process, and honestly a great indicator so far in terms of guys wearing different hats, trying to help the team and making strides forward. I think has been really positive. So this week's felt great. Looking forward to being back home again.
Great, thanks Dan. We'll start with you. How has it been kind of building chemistry, finding the balance between building chemistry but also being still results-based? Hey, we don't want to walk away without any points here, but there were some good things.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the conundrum of sports in the professional realm. I think trying to find not solace, but understanding that there's still value in performances that don't create a 3-point yield or whatever you want to call it. I think this early in the year, for the guys that have been around and the people that have been around the sport, especially in this league, I think it's all about peaking at the right time. We just came from playing a team that did just that last year, entering into playoffs in a lower seed, and then making it to MLS Cup. So I think for us, it's more about getting those new faces, finding the synergy internally, focusing on that, especially these early doors. But I think the onus is on us. We have a great opportunity here at home. A few teams have not had 2 home games in their first 3, so it's important for us to take advantage of that and to play a style and look like ourselves, that we look to not only make a staple of our home performances, but how we compete on the road as well.
How important have Sydney and Bree been to your guys' just overall performance on the field and off the field too?
Amazing. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with Sydney since we first started in MLS in 2020, and so having her sort of as a constant in that realm where there's been a lot of turnover, like I said, it's professional sports, that happens, but she's been a constant and someone that's been able to keep us at a relatively high level, no matter what hat she has to wear, what department she's really overseeing. And then the addition of Bree has been fantastic. I think sports nutrition has come a long way, and for a long time maybe that role wasn't well defined, but in a high performance culture, I think she's really leaned in and been able to step up and give us as players and as an organization a lot of things to think about and incorporate into our routine that maybe, or not maybe, I'm sure not a lot of other teams have that ability. So we're very lucky to have both of them, and it's great to see them every day and to know that they're here for us and to help us reach our maximum potential.
Dan, when you talk about wearing, the guy wearing different hats, how about in your case, in your game? Have you had to do that in this preseason, and especially in the first 2 games with other BGA, when this is the first full season with him?
For sure. I think it's an inevitability for a lot of people as a pro. I wouldn't be sitting here if I wasn't able to wear different hats. I've had to adapt several times throughout my career. But I think as it pertains to BJ in this year, it's a little bit more of the same. I think maybe even the positional requirements as it pertains to me are a little bit more balanced offensively and defensively. So it's been great to lean into that, understand I have someone playing next to me that I have great rapport with and great experience with, Jack, more times than not. So we're able to problem solve a lot of times on the field and know that things are going to operate a little bit differently than they did last year and in years past. So both of us have been great about leaning into that and making sure that we can accomplish and execute the roles of the position to each respect at a higher level, because that's what the team needs. But definitely some adaptation, but it's healthy. I think it grows you as a player no matter how old you are.
Dan, you're an experienced player, and you've been through a lot of situations similar to this and different, but this team now has a lot of younger players who maybe haven't gone through this sort of similar experiences. So what have you noticed from them, and what are you doing anything to kind of help out in the locker room? Are their heads down or anything like that, and not being able to score in the first couple of games?
Certainly no heads down. I don't see that. I don't think that's really part of a lot of the personalities that have come in, and that's great. I don't know if that's lucky. I think we look for guys that are really going to respond well when adversity hits. But I think it's more about giving room as an older player, being able to give room for those personalities to shine and take ownership of the process and not just show up and think, okay, here's a lane I have to stay in maybe. I got to make sure that I'm an important cog in the machine. I think taking more ownership in the direction of the club, knowing that this is a little bit of a transitional period, maybe that once was, now we're no longer. This is the start of something new. We started fresh. Last year was tumultuous for a lot of different reasons, but now it's a constant. We know what's expected. We know who's in charge. And those guys are just tasked with absorbing as much as they can. And as it pertains to my role and some of the older guys, like I said, just making room for those personalities to flourish. And I think we need a lot more big personalities. And I think a lot of these guys have it, and just making sure that they feel comfortable enough to, one, express it in a locker room setting, but more importantly, expressing it on the field. And I think that's our battle right now, making sure that we can get those guys incorporated and for that to show.
Okay. Dan, last year's game against Portland was one of probably the very few occasions for any of you that have been here since the beginning that you really got beaten up on by a team. Does that give you a little bit of extra edge for, I think, probably the 7 of you that are still starters that were on that field that disappointing day at Providence Park last year?
Yeah, disappointing day. That's the most polite I'll be in describing what that experience was like. It hits the nail on the head. But as it pertains to Portland, of course, I think it's hard to forget something like that. But if I'm being totally honest, given the year that we underwent, there are a lot of other teams that I personally and as a group, I think collectively we have circled to get back into even the score on. And thankfully, a lot of them are in our conference, and we get to see them more than once a year. So I think that's really the closer point to the fire that's burning in all of us, and certainly in me. But to have this one-off out-of-conference opponent at home, given what happened last year, I think it's a great opportunity for us. And I know that those 7 guys and the club as a whole is acutely aware of what that felt like and what we want to do in response.
Well,
VJ a few minutes ago talked about when you guys are playing against a press, looking maybe for more chances in behind and attackers making more of those runs as well. Just how big of a focus has that been this week after playing a team like Red Bulls to, for your role and for the midfielders, looking more maybe for that opportunity for the long balls over the top?
For sure. I think each game, I know this sounds unoriginal and old, but each game represents different challenges and whatever. But to put it in context, I think Red Bull is a team that very clearly for a long time has had an identity where they're going to maybe not be as meticulous and well metered in their build-up. They're going to try to put you in terrible situations to defend and uncomfortable ones. And I think that's something that all teams can do, and especially us. And so as it translates to our game and our style, I think the onus definitely falls on midfielders, defenders. When you get time and space, are you able to have a runner, to see it, to play it, especially early on in the game? I think it opens up a lot of other opportunities throughout the game. But that being said, the second half of Red Bull felt really good in terms of how we're able to shift the pressure onto them. Also, that being said, we were 2-0 down on the road, and I think it's a little bit easier to be brave and to throw caution to the wind a little bit if we're being realistic. So I think that's the challenge we're facing right now, is how to be controlled in our aggression and making sure that we can put the opposition's defending players in bad spots. That's the name of the game. And force mistakes, but also just get our offensive chemistry clicking at a high level that makes it almost impossible to defend. That's the ideal. So for us, definitely playing in behind, I think we have guys that have that in their DNA. It's just about getting synced up, knowing the timing, knowing the cues, and knowing where we want to attack. Not necessarily down the channels all the time, not necessarily up the gut all the time. I think it's something we can continue to grow on in terms of balancing where we want to play. But the goal is behind their defense, so we are going to try to get there as often as possible.
Ross?
It's an interesting point, Dan. For all the years you've been in the league, how much has it changed in terms of what players need to scout the opposition, given that, first week of the season against an American manager, last week German, this week it'll be against an English manager, different styles. How much has that changed the onus on players then understanding what the opposition is going to do?
Yeah, it's huge. I think realistically it's hard for guys to really lean into those broader picture themes from week to week. I think the older guys have an easier job doing that, because I remember being young, and as a defender, I would just watch the winger that I was playing against. And that was sort of me doing my homework, whereas now I take maybe a wider lens and try to understand what the teams are trying to accomplish on a, I don't know, on a global scale, or stylistically what we could be prepared a little bit better to see. But I think as a group, it's part of the modern game. I think being able to have access to different softwares and clips, and the staff here, technical staff, do a great job of making sure that we have that content available to us. And we aren't seeing it for the first time on game day. It's stuff that we've sort of had on the TVs and in our own little digital locker room. We know what to look for. So it's just about guys leaning in and being professional and making sure that there are no real surprises on game day as it comes to the stylistic things from coach to coach and team to team. But knowing the nuances of what you're likely to see, and more importantly, knowing where you can hurt the other team, not just being aware of them all the time. But it's a challenge. It's part of the modern game, and it's something that I think is a great thing to have under our belt 3 games in, to have so many different styles from different parts of the league coming into Nashville or having to go to a difficult place to play. And it's, I think, the silver lining of having this start to the year.
What have you seen on the Portland this year?
In general, I think Portland's a team that's, also trying to find their footing a little bit within a competitive conference. I think they have a lot of attacking players that have been brought in and have talent that's clear. And I think maybe the synergy is something that they're still searching for this early in the year. But they're always a team. Historically, they have a great pedigree. They have great success in the league. They're another one of those teams that the regular season maybe doesn't reflect their full potential every year, but if they're able to sneak into a playoff spot, I think they remain one of the clubs that nobody really wants to play or have to go to Portland and play against. So we go into this matchup with utmost respect. It's early in the year. I think everybody is on similar level terms, and it's more important for us to focus on how we perform at home.
We'll go to Ben on the Zoom.
Yeah, Dan, I'm a little curious if you could just maybe give an inside look into how things have changed this year playing with Andy on the other side, and just kind of the balance that you guys try to find. I know Andy likes to really get involved in the attack and push forward, and I'm just curious how that has impacted your role on the left, and if you have had to be maybe more aware of your positioning this year, or if anything has changed on that front.
Yeah, I think maybe Andy offers a different profile to guys we've had in the past playing in that position. He's incredibly talented with the ball at his feet, and sometimes as a dribble first, he can get us out of tight situations and progress the ball down the right side. He's shown that to great effect already. As far as the balance and positional relationship between he and I think it goes for both sides. I also enjoy getting involved in the attack. And I think us just finding the balance of when one's doing it, can the other one be a little bit more conservative and help keep the team up and close together to retain the ball if we're not able to score right away, to keep pressure on the opponent. And same thing goes for me when he's up the field. And ideally, I think there's times where we could both be involved. I think in a perfect world, we can both be posing the other team a lot of issues out wide that'll open up space for guys in the middle of the field that we have that I know are really capable of hurting the other team. So I think it's complementary. It's certainly something that has been a great addition to the team as far as a personality and a quality player such as Andy. But, our approach is to put the opposition in a equally uncomfortable position, and each game reflects something different. So we just have to continue to work on that balance and make sure that when we do get into attacking positions, more than anything, that we can produce goals and assists.